Hello, and welcome to this episode of Conversations on Conversations, where each week we explore a topic to help us have more powerful conversations with ourselves and with others. I'm your host, Sarah Noll Wilson, and this week our guest is the brilliant Katrina Jones. So let me share a little bit about Katrina. Katrina Jones is the founder and CEO of Advancing Equity and Inclusion, a diversity, equity, inclusion, and talent consulting and coaching firm. She helps organizations connect their programmatic efforts to comprehensive DEI strategies that help accelerate their progress in building more diverse teams and fostering more inclusive, equitable, and psychologically safe cultures. Katrina has more than 15 plus years of experience leading and managing functions in DEI, HR, and talent at companies like AWS, Latham Watkins in Europe. She believes that when we prioritize closing equity gaps, our workplaces can become spaces of learning and growth where everyone thrives. And I'm so excited for this conversation and to meet you officially, formally. And we'll talk about that in a minute.
Sarah, thank you. Thank you. I am so excited and I just appreciate all the love. I appreciate the invitation, and being with you right now is like a dream because we have been connected on social. We've been in conversation, and this is the first time that we've met. And it's like meeting the rock star or
to me, I'm like, it's like we're on a first date and you all get to experience it, but we've been pen pals for a while and we're super excited to get on this date.
Yes. I'm going to call it's like the second date because it doesn't have the awkwardness
of
the first one where you're trying to figure out like, oh, wait, I don't know. Do you? Oh, okay. No, it's better, right?
Yeah, no, it's, and one of the things, so we were chatting for about a half an hour before this.
Yes.
But one of the things of how I was introduced to Katrina and her work and just who she is was through Twitter. And I don't remember when I followed you, where that was, but our circles collided and we interacted, and there was a moment particularly, and I was scanning back through our direct messages.
Yeah.
I don't remember the post that you pushed against, but there was a post that I shared back in like early 2020.
Yeah.
And you offered really like more specific language around how can organizations think differently about how they were treating their Black employees and showing up. And it fostered this beautiful connection and somebody who I feel like always has my back and isn't afraid to check in with me from a mental health perspective and vice versa. So I'm so excited.
I am excited, and thank you for calling that memory back up because I had forgotten. I was racking my brain too, trying to figure out, wait a minute, how did we? And I so love and respect your voice in this space and pushing people to have conversations and to have conversations even and especially when it's hard.
Yeah.
And your default is, oh, I don't want to do this. This is uncomfortable. I want to back out. And you're doing it, bringing people into this and telling them how to have these conversations and how to push through when you feel uncomfortable and when it gets really hard and really difficult.
Yeah.
Where that makes sense to, as we talked about. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's times when we lean in and we have the conversations, and there are times that it's okay to protect ourselves and stay safe, right?
Yes.
Right. And when we lean in and go, oh, I hadn't thought about that, or tell me more, whatever that might look like. I think what is so beautiful about having you and even some other guests that we've had the privilege of having on the show is it literally, so many of those moments came from not necessarily like easy moments of learning from my perspective, and potentially even maybe not comfortable moments for you to speak up or not knowing how the reaction would be. Katrina, what else would you want people to know about you? I mean, we have our formal bios and then I'm like, but what else do you want us to know about you?
Oh, gosh. One, I should put this out there right away. I'm a Beyonc super fan, lover, but it's because I'm from the South. I'm from Texas,
Mm.
and our lives have been parallel in some ways. Not to say that I am Beyonce or anything like that.
I
Parallel
mean,
in that
you can
way.
own it,
I look some similarities, okay? But she's from Texas. She's from Houston. She grew up in a predominantly Black environment, opposite of me because I grew up in a predominantly white environment.
Mm.
But we have these Southern roots, and I feel like I've watched her grow up, and I have grown up with her. And so it's this really close connection of seeing someone whose work and whose talent you admire, and whom you feel like you all are, have ties together in this weird way. Something else I would want the audience to know is that I am somebody who appears, vulnerable and willing to share in some spaces, and that's been a journey for me. It's been something that's been really hard, actually, to get to and through, and something that I keep pushing myself on. As much as I share, and sometimes I wonder and question still, am I oversharing? Am I sharing too much? There's a lot that I'm not sharing. But I've made the choice to put myself out there more, in part because I will see people like yourself who put themselves out there and who are honest about what they're going through. And that invites me, it encourages me, it pushes me to say, somebody else needs to hear what your story is. It will matter. It will have meaning to someone else. And so go and do that. And I'm still
go
figuring
ahead.
out, like, doing that in a way that's, one, true to myself, but also honors boundaries.
Yeah. It's well, and sometimes in those moments, not only can it be for me anyway, I'll speak from my experience. It often is healing for me to share, and then I realize it can be healing for other people because they realize they're not alone. And boy, do we. That is a real common theme, is that we often feel everyone's got it figured out, or I'm the only one experienced this, or I'm the only one struggling with X, Y, or Z. And I mean, that's something that we've heard just repeatedly through the work that we do, right? Clients and personal relationships. And so I appreciate that you put yourself out there, because I am better because of that.
Yes. I hear that fully. And I have seen that. I experienced that as well. We see people and we see them in these shiny moments where everything looks perfect. Speaking of Beyonce, right? It's like Beyonce on stage with the wind machine, and then everything, the outfit is perfect. Like, everything just seems like it's working. There's pyrotechnics, and you just don't see, you just don't know what is in the background for people. And recently I think we've seen a lot of that. I've seen a lot of that. One of the things that I've seen is there have been a number of high profile Black people in different professions who have committed suicide. And seeing that, and seeing, the woman who was a Miss America or Miss USA, a person who was a mayor of a town in Maryland. There was someone here who was a government official as well. And it, again, on the surface, you would think these people have it made. They've got good lives, all that. And just, you don't know what is going on with folks. You don't know. And that sharing is powerful, because it, like you said, it tells people, you're not alone. I am also dealing with this. It gives them her permission, not just to, share their own story, but to also even acknowledge what's happening for them.
Yeah, because I think I that's such a good point from the standpoint of, well, not just the standpoint, but from a perspective of, I lost my train of thought as I was trying to clarify, but that's okay. From the perspective of it, there's a lot of suffering that happens in silence, and to the point that I caught my thought is that you might not even realize that that's what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
right? You may not realize that we did an episode a couple weeks ago, and I had the chance to speak with Erica Reed about trauma and
Yeah.
trauma-informed leadership, and that you might not even realize that the reason you're maybe struggling with focus, the reason you may be more
Yeah.
emotionally irritable is actually because you're dealing with some mental health challenges.
Yeah.
And that point about naming it, like you
Yeah.
said, of being able to see it and name it. So now what do I want to do with it?
Yeah. That is, oh, that one hits
Mm-hmm.
right in the gut. Because I have definitely experienced that in the last few years of experiencing emotions. And it's strange. It's almost like you're in the ocean and there's this, I don't know, barge or something that's floating in the ocean nearby, and you can see it, but you can't really see it clearly. And so it's off in the distance, and you're still just going through the motions and doing all the things that you need to do, and seeing that and saying, "Huh, I should. What is that? I want to know what that is. I should be able to see that clearly." But you
Yeah.
can't. But you can't. You can't. And when you realize that you haven't been able to see that thing clearly, and you're finally able to see it, right? To name it and say, "Oh, that's what that." Yes, actually. And now I can go do something about it. I can go talk to people. I can go ask for help if I need to ask for help. I can do all the things that I need to do, not to fix it per se, but just to start to wrap your arms around it.
Yeah. And that, playing on that metaphor that the barge in the water is maybe it's causing some rough waves. Maybe it's causing
Yes.
some
Yes.
wakes that are, just
Yes.
the other
Because
day
it will be. Yes.
yeah, a friend of mine said, "How are you doing today?" I said, "I'm riding the wave." She said, "Do you need someone to float with you?" And I said, "I don't know.
Aw.
It depends on the moment." I said, "Some moments I feel like I have a cocktail in my hand and I'm floating on the water and I'm taking in the vitamin D, and the next minute I forgot how to swim." And
Yes.
and so like I appreciate that metaphor. And just
Yeah.
for quick context for our listeners, we know that this episode's going to air a few weeks after. So just for context of where we are in the world of recording this, it's actually March 4th, and we know that we're still in an ever evolving and ever escalating, it feels like, time of uncertainty. And when Katrina and I connected about talking and what would be some topics, all of them were brilliant, and many of them we'll probably explore in future episodes. But there was language that you shared that I want to share with the audience that inspired this talk, which is how do we remain soft when everything around us feels hard? I want to leave that hang a minute, because even just saying that out loud, certainly having a physical reaction to that, because things feel so complex, like we were talking about before hopping on here, in a way that maybe a number of years ago didn't.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, just to start from your own journey, and again, whatever you want to share from the standpoint of your evolution into prioritizing, focusing on how can we show up more emotionally supportive for ourselves and more emotionally supportive for other people.
Yeah. So I am an empath. I'm going to share lots of things with the audience. I am an empath by nature, and it's a feature that has always been present for me. And when I think about my life, it was when I was a kid, I was that kid who would be looking out for and was hyper perceptive about the kid who was feeling bad, who was feeling left out, the emotions. And so that's something that I've been, navigating. I know it now as a strength. What the work that I've had to do is to work with it, right? To not take on other people's emotions, to be sensitive and to be supportive, but not to become, and I'll say this, a crutch, for lack of a better word, for people in a way such that I end up, losing focus on myself and doing too much, basically. But for me, that journey starts from that place of being an empath, being hypersensitive, being really attuned to how people were feeling, to where literally I can walk into a room and I can pick up things. And, it was helpful, and it was also sometimes really scary growing up, because I was so in tune, and sometimes in some of the environments that I was in, I was picking up on anger from people, and in response, I was always, working to be and to make things easier, right? And so setting aside how I felt, anything that was important for me to say, "Oh, you're angry, and I just want to make things, easier for you. I just want to, what do I need to do in this moment to be a useful and helpful engine?" And so, your anger will be able to subside, and we could get back to a good place, or you could get back to a good place. It's self-sacrificing, right? Like, the years of therapy learning have taught me it's self-sacrificing in a way that's bad for me.
Yeah.
But the journey does start there, from that place of empathy. And even in my profession as an HR professional, and sitting and being curious with people, and having to show up and be soft, and wanting to do that because I care about people. Yes, the empath kicking it, but I care about people. I want them to have a different experience. I want them, to not default to the stereotypes of HR, of, oh, your HR person is X. They're this crusty person and unhelpful, all of those things.
They just check a box, and
yes.
and some of them exist. There's there's stereotypes happen sometimes for a reason.
Exactly. But because I care so deeply about people and the empath, I stay soft, and wanting to help, and wanting to support, wanting to be joy. And part of the work that I've been doing actually lately is to be joy, but what do I need to do to be joy? Gratitude is a practice for me that helps to develop that. What do I do with those emotions that don't fit neatly into joy? And even recognizing that those emotions that don't fit neatly into joy still have joy attached to them. Even some of the negative stuff, as weird as it sounds, and it's as weird as it sounds, some of the negative things, there's always learning lessons. There are things that I take away. So bad things are not all bad, and nothing is binary. But that is where it starts for me, is in that empathy and wanting and to be supportive. Also, just genuinely being curious about other people, and wanting to be a helper, wanting to be, like Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers in the world, wanting to be a helper, especially when people may not have anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. There's there's so much to explore in that. Well, first, when I was having the strong reaction as you were talking, I was thinking, my God, are you describing my life right now? Right?
Yes.
The self-sacrificing, maybe sometimes having that fawn response, right?
Yes.
From like, how do I, like, almost that might come from a stress response of, okay, how do I appease you so that you don't, lash out? Or
let's be clear that girls are socialized, women and girls are socialized to be, we will put our own feelings way in the back of the parking lot. We prioritize everyone else. And that's what we're socialized to do, because women are supposed to be nice and helpful and supportive. And they should always be thinking about everyone else to the deficit of themselves.
Yeah. Sometimes to the boy, we could go down this path.
Yes.
This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart.
Yes.
Because I will tell you that And it's important as we think about how do we take care of ourselves emotionally,
Yeah.
is to understand that, and we have needs too. And
Yes.
and as women, we have needs that aren't being met. And I will tell you that often when I'm doing work, especially when we're talking about how in relationships, for example,
Yeah.
when there's a struggle or a disconnect, it often comes down to we have a need that's not being met. And I
Yeah.
can't tell
Oh,
you
absolutely.
how many women
Yeah.
literally go, I don't even know what I need.
Yeah.
And I know that because that was me. I mean,
Yeah.
and similarly have been on a therapeutic journey, and to reclaim and even just listen to,
Yes.
it's okay. It's okay for me to think about, ask for, right?
Yeah.
Or protect my needs. And so that's such an important call out.
We have clearly been on the same highway, on the same on, the same or very similar journey. So that's also been part of my work is that therapy. It is the investment in self, and that is, when I talk about staying in joy and what's connected to that is definitely gratitude, developing that practice. But gratitude is for me. It's something that I need to do to practice it, to identify. And I'll tell you one of the things that I do. I actually make a list. This started with a career coach that I had. Well, actually, let me pause because it started before that. Years ago, one of my best friends and I used to trade these daily thankful lists. And oh gosh, man, this probably started back in like 2007 or something like that, because I moved and we were no longer in the same city, same state. And so we would trade these gratitude lists and just randomly, like, here are the things that I'm thankful for today. Um, it stayed, it stuck, and it was something we would do, we'd done for years. And some days it was really easy because you'd be able to name 10 different things, right? And it would be, oh, I got this promotion, or I got this whatever, I'm doing this thing, I have a vacation coming up. And some days, ooh, it was literally, I remember there were times where I was making a list and it was, I'm alive, breathing. Okay. I've got lunch. I know where my next lunch is coming from. I've got on shoes. That's what I got today. And it pushed me to think about, and this is why the practice is so important, to develop gratitude, to be and stay in gratitude for the big things, but the small things, because some days it is just, all right, I've got shoes on, I'm warm, I'm comfortable, right? And I need to remember that. I need to not be stuck with gratitude as it's only gratitude when I'm going to, the Bahamas, and, I've got this job making this salary and all these things, and I've got this is gratitude. Just existing sometimes is where the gratitude comes from. But I restarted that. I'd kind of gone in and out of the practice over the years. Kids, life happens, and all of a sudden you're not doing that every day. But I've reclaimed it and restarted it actually with another friend, and this is something that I picked up, and also that my career coach encouraged me to do, to make a list of wins. And so now I actually track a list of both gratitude and wins. I can't say I do it every day, but at least once a week, usually twice a week, I'll make just a list on that day, whatever the day is. Here are the things that I'm grateful for. Here are the wins that I've had, professionally, whatever, however you want to term those wins. And once a week, we trade the gratitude list. And so it's a beautiful practice. And it helps me really stay in that space, and to also, it helps me when I'm working through really hard stuff. We were talking earlier, the last couple of weeks similarly have been really, really hard for me. And this helps me to come back to myself. And it's a way that I am prioritizing and also investing in myself, right? Because that's the how do we stay soft? Yes, we have to take care of ourselves. This is how I take care of myself.
And that idea of by pausing to reflect on where am I at, what do I have, isn't to minimize, because what I hear in how you talk about gratitude and that practice of gratitude that you've built is that it's not to dismiss or minimize or discount the challenges, but it's also it's like opening up the. Because, when things are hard, it can be real easy to be so hyper focused on that. And not that there's anything wrong with that. So I want to be really clear, and everything that I'm saying is not like, oh, we should just think happy thoughts. That's
no.
So far
this
from
is
the
not
truth.
the toxic
This
positivity
is not, we're not going to tell you to put a smile on your face and just like push through it.
Yes.
But it helps you open up your blinders just to see a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to hear you talk about your practice of gratitude, because when that was one of the first practices, and I didn't understand it at the time, but when I was diagnosed with panic disorder a number of years ago, oh wow, almost 10 years ago. Oh,
is it an anniversary?
It's an anniversary. Gosh.
Yes.
So 11 years ago. No, yeah. So 11 years ago yesterday. Is that true? Yeah, 2013. So 11 years ago yesterday, I had like my first full-blown panic attack. Thought I was dying, rushed to the hospital, right? Like called Nick, thinking it was the last time I was ever going to talk to him.
Yeah.
So I just was,
I got the chills. I got scared. Just
you knew it was an anniversary too. Like I hadn't made the connection.
No, because
you are real empathetic.
Because I'm like, no, wait a minute. This is yes. And happy anniversary.
Thank you. And I've definitely come a long way.
Yeah.
But one of the practice was a gratitude practice.
Yeah.
And just every day writing 3 things. And at the time I was like, what the hell does this have to do with me not losing my shit every like 10 minutes?
Yes.
But what it did for me was, and I'm realizing and talking about it, I've gotten away from it, and it would serve me to get back into it. So thank you for this gift of reminding me of the power. And I don't think even then I understood or appreciated how much of an investment it really was.
Yeah,
so thank you for that.
No. And one, truly happy anniversary, because as somebody who has a diagnosis, I was diagnosed with ADD, ADHD in December of 2020. And those, marking the occasion, and I'll never forget it, because once you have a diagnosis, you can go from there. It's
see
so
the
important
barge.
to just know. Yes, you can see it. There it is. Okay, what are we going to do about that? And the gratitude, it's funny, because that was what happened with me too. I realized when I restarted it that I hadn't done it in a had completely gotten away from it, and forgot about the impact and how it did help, and because it was something where I was just tunnel vision or tunneling on, I should just be grateful to be alive. Absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely
you should just be,
not.
what do you have to be sad about, Katrina? You got a good life.
Yes.
Never say that to anyone.
Do not.
Especially someone who's struggling with depression. Not helpful at all.
Do not. It allowed me, one, to hold on to and to see like the tiniest spark of hope, which is something that I need to have. It helps me to push through, helps me to bring joy, to be in a place where I'm staying soft and listening and supportive of other people. But I can't do that without that. Right? So without that nugget of hope, without that little spark of hope to hold on to. And when it's hard, I also really embrace that this sucks right now. This just sucks. And so I'm still doing, making the gratitude list. I'm still trading the list. And I'm also embracing, acknowledging that I'm in a really bad place right now. Okay. That's it.
Yeah. And just to be present with that and to ride
Yeah.
that wave, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
that's the, I know that, from a mindfulness practice, that attention to,
Yeah.
non-judgmental curiosity. Those are the brain glitches
Yeah.
that come now in our world, right?
Yeah. No. We got through it. Yes. Non-judgmental curiosity. Yes. Speak on it.
And again, when I think about, I was introduced to mindfulness and being present with what is, because so much of our culture has this desire to chase happiness, right? Like the positivity that sometimes, and just to be clear for people, if you because I know there might be some people like, yeah, but isn't it healthy to have a positive perspective? And here's what I would say to this, and here's what a lot of research would say is having a positive perspective is healthy.
Yeah.
It becomes unhealthy when it's the only one you allow for yourself or you allow for other people. Like that's when it becomes unproductive. And, I'm going to forget the name that somebody, a psychologist, I'll try to remember and put it in the notes, but she had written an article and said, positivity is like ice cream. It's good every once in a while.
Yeah.
But if you're just like shoving the ice cream down your throat or someone else's throat, it's like, it's too much ice cream. Like it's enough. I'm lactose intolerant now. Like we gotta.
Yes. Now I'm sick. Thanks.
Yeah. Now I'm sick. And that idea of, how do we stay soft when things are hard is being okay, that naming, this is hard now. And for me, it was the practice of literally getting curious about my panic or even, and now that transforms into whether that's anxiety or, exhaustion or, trauma or even just depression. Or even just, we had a hard conversation or you pushed me back on something that I wasn't expecting. Like, that's an interesting feeling. Like instead of shutting down or instead of lashing out, really just going and being present with it and going, that's interesting. Like I feel like that's an internal phrase I have a lot. Like, that's interesting, Sarah.
This is the barge, right? You're seeing the barge and you're saying, that's interesting. Let me get closer to it.
Exactly.
Maybe if I just,
like,
paddle
I swim
up,
a little.
I can see it. Yes.
Yeah. And what do I learn? What do I learn about it? And not again from that sometimes unintentionally dismissive, like, but good things always happen and you're going to pull through it. But just like, what am I learning about myself in this moment? What is this teaching me right now? Yeah. And that makes me, because I want to go back to, if it's okay, I want to honor if there's more that you want to share, but I want to go back to, you said something that I'd love to give some more space to, which is, well, two things, because you talked about joy. Yeah. So we'll start there, and then I want to explore that idea of how joy can be attached to even the hard times. But so again, in the spirit of talking about positivity, there is a difference between happiness and joy.
Yes.
And so I would love to hear your definition of when you talk about, I want to come from a place of joy. I don't interpret that as like, hey, how's it going? And I'm going to be the cheerleader.
Yeah.
But so what does joy mean and look like for you?
Oh my gosh. I love that you asked this question. What joy looks like for me, what it means to me is lightness. So when I think about joy and my standard, my definition of it is lightness. And I've literally been saying this, to be joy, but to be joy, to be light. Because the two are the same. And it's to be light in such a way where you're rolling with things, you're fluid, you are also bringing joy to people. Unexpected joy where you go. It's not to be a happy person, to be the person that always walks into the room and like Norm on Cheers, if you watched that 80s show. Norm!
Yeah, we've really like aged ourselves there.
Fully.
So what's the I'm trying to think of.
I have no idea. I would be really hard pressed right now to name. What is
I can't name anything.
I don't. But that's the pop culture reference I have is Norm. Yeah, and everybody. No, it's not that at all. That's, to me, that's the opposite of joy. It's just being able to seize it, to hold on to it wherever I can, to be it, for it to be this lightness, to be this spark of light, and to hold on to it. And it, part of it is a reminder as well to be present and be aware of when I'm getting away from joy, when the joy is getting away from me, because that means that I then need to go and do things to fill my cup, to do things for myself, that I need to find ways to come back into that joy, to come back into that light. So that's the definition for me.
Isn't that interesting to think about? I've been on a journey of reevaluating and examining my relationship with rest, right?
Yeah. Who? Yes.
And sometimes I think we can think of self-care or recharging so that we can keep producing instead of, I love that language, that your language of, I need to recharge so I can get back to my lightness.
Yes.
Right. Which is
Yes.
different and so much more powerful for me anyway, as I hear that of, okay, so when I'm moving away or floating,
Yes.
maybe I'm getting pulled
Yes,
out by the
yes,
riptide or
yes,
whatever, if we're
yes.
playing with that metaphor.
Yes. We're going to stay with it. Yes.
Yeah, it's, like what do I need so that I can reconnect with that that being present, that
Yeah.
lightness, because when things are hard, when they're when we're emotionally stressed, when there's
Yes.
like the world we're in, there's
Like
just
right
so
now?
like right
Like
now.
right now.
It's so
Yes.
complex on so many levels. And one of the things that I think I want to say this. It's really important right now. I'm going to just step out.
Yeah.
But I've got a foot in our conversation and out. It's really important for people to hold space, not only for themselves and others, and realize that just because something doesn't feel emotionally stressful to you,
Yeah.
whether it's a world event, whether it's things that are happening, right? That doesn't mean that it's not exhausting or depleting or causing harm and stress for other
Yeah.
people. And so, I know there are people who listen to this so that they can get tips from a leadership perspective, is like, pay attention to what's happening in the world
Yes.
and then
Yes.
name and acknowledge that, because it's likely you have people who might be struggling because of that, even if you aren't.
That is so important. Sarah,
Yeah.
thank you for that, because that's one of the revelations that came out of the racial justice reckoning of 2020, is that leaders need to be aware. They need to be paying attention, and you can't be in your own, tunnel, in your own lane, just, completely shut off from everything that is happening in the world. And I would hear, as I was in conversation with leaders, I would hear, well, I can't pay attention to everything all the time, all of that. And I'm going to push back really hard on that, because nobody's asking you to be, the anchor on CNN. That's not what the ask is. Nobody's asking you to be, super informed and to spend an hour every morning. But whatever the way that you could plug in, I mean, it literally could be, and we have access to too much information for folks to say, I can't. There's,
Right.
literally NPR, national news stories. They have a 3-minute briefing. I think the extended briefing is 10 minutes. What if you spent 10 minutes just with that, right? What if you spent 10 minutes? And what if you just said, put that out there to say, I do my best to stay informed. I'm out here and I'm curious, and I'm not going to, catch everything. There are going to be things that I'm not going to be aware of. And please, if you are going through something as a leader, if you're going through something, if your community is affected, please let me know. Let me, so that I can be aware. No one says you have to be plugged into everything. You have to read and absorb and listen to all the things, but you can even just own that you're trying, and you can say, and if I'm not, and if things are continuing on business as usual and you need something, right? Or you want to make me aware that this is happening for this community. Please, I'm open. So staying open, you know?
I love that. Thank you for adding that,
Yeah.
really powerful practice, because, and that's, as we're, talking, we've been talking about being emotionally supportive for ourselves, but that's a
Yeah.
really important way we can be emotionally supportive for other people. And again, maybe the ask isn't, like you said, to know all, but it's just to
Yes.
recognize that it's in the room, and that's such an important thing.
The ask is something that you do so incredibly well, and something that I really appreciate about you is staying curious. That really is the ask. It's how our connection started in sharing feedback, and your response wasn't to double down or to dismiss what I was saying. Your response was, let me sit with that. Let me think about that. What does that mean? And sitting with it, I mean, that allowed us to build from there, to build a deeper, more meaningful connection, because you sat with it, and then and you spent some time with it, and then you had your own thoughts and awareness that came out of that. And that is the one thing I've been thinking about, some of the hard conversations that I've had this week. A hard conversation that I need to have at some point in time in the next probably 2 weeks. And one of the things holding me back from having the hard conversation is, from my perspective, there's a lack of curiosity on the other side. And so I'm challenged to even engage because of the lack of curiosity. And so how are we going to what are we going to do? How are we going to be in this space and trying to bridge and trying to understand the other if there's no curiosity, if you're dismissive, if you're going to shut down? But just that curiosity it's the most, I'm not going to say the most, but one of the most important things that you've just got to, you got to have.
Well, I mean, thank you. And I have lots of thoughts about all of this. And my sister was at the Holocaust Museum a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And they had the opportunity to speak with a survivor of the concentration camps. And she was wearing one of my Chronically Curious shirts.
Yeah.
And they had the chance to talk with them. And the gentleman, and I don't recall his name, but he pointed at her shirt and he was like, curiosity is one of the biggest gifts of love we can give somebody.
Oh my gosh. Oh. Can you say that one more time? Can you say that? Yeah.
I hope I'm capturing it, but yeah, that curiosity is one of the greatest gifts of love we can give someone, because and we can give to ourselves too, right? Like that we don't know, there's things we can learn, and exactly like you've shared, that it creates these deeper levels of connections with each other. So when we talk about how do we have conversations with ourselves and with other people, so much of it comes down to our willingness to get curious, and to get curious again about the hard stuff, and also to get curious about, well, what do I need in this moment, and what, right? I mean, all of that comes down to that practice. It's fine tuning it and focusing it, and so when you think about how do I show up more powerfully for other people, it's just, right. It's even just that it's that invitation to say, hey, I there's things I don't know, but I want to know. So help. I'm going to do my work, and I'm still going to miss stuff. So if I do, let me know. And boy, there is a real there. Part of it is the article that I was fortunate enough to be able to write recently about how do we be more emotionally supportive versus emotionally dismissive. We are in a really hard time.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I don't I'm not trying to be pessimistic or anything. I'm a realist of just and so when there are moments of dismiss, again, either to ourselves or to other people, it feels so much like it carries so much more weight because like the level of depletion people are feeling now, or how quickly we're
Yes.
right depleting from
Yes.
this. It's a real challenge right now.
Oh, that is so much truth. That is so much truth. When there's a lack of curiosity there, and it's, it hits in that dismissive way, and there is such a tremendous emotional impact with it. I earlier this week was on a parent all parent conference, and the school was talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. There were some hard questions that were asked, including a question that I posed to them. And the response to one of the questions in particular was incredibly dismissive. It started with, well, if you ask that question, you must be someone who wasn't here, in 2016 when, and so even, that start, the response and start was already dismissive. And that tone continued. And after the forum, I stepped back. I felt completely devastated in a way that was physical for me. I was sad. I was just feeling angry, frustrated, sad, and almost, and I'll name it, almost cornered. Right, because the dismissiveness had completely shut down in a way that I felt like left me and my family with few options. And so that dismissiveness does have that effect where once you've said, nope, not going to stay in this place of curiosity, why are you asking, why would you say something like that? Then all of a sudden the wall comes down and that opportunity, goes away. And if you're lucky, you're able to recover. But if you're unlucky, the wall keeps getting higher.
Right. And like thickening.
Thicker.
And yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I'm so sorry that you experienced that first. I just want to name
you.
that. And
Thank you.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And that's, I feel like in all the conversations we've been having with this show, so much of the theme is just what does it look like to be even more intentional
Yeah.
in the words we use, more
Yeah.
and not just having good intentions. Let me clarify that,
Yeah.
right? But really being intentional so that you're having the impact that you hope.
Yes.
And understanding that those aren't the same things. And pain and again and both to other people, right?
Yeah.
And like your experience and that harm that caused to you.
Yeah.
And also recognizing that and also how do we make sure that we're having the impact to ourselves of, in the conversations we're having. And because again, there's a real cost.
Yes.
There's a real cost. There always was a cost.
There
right?
always was. Yes. Yes.
But it just feels like the waves are getting higher faster.
Yes. And in this period where everything is heightened and everything feels, some days it feels just catastrophic and multiple catastrophes in a way that is distinctly different from previous periods. Not for everybody. I'm not going to say this is for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Thank you for that.
But but it feels distinctly different. And it also feels like there's so many communities that are collectively in pain and dealing with these multiple catastrophes at the same time. And that intention, impact, and being curious, because that's that through line is that being curious about your impact, being curious about the impact to the other person, the other people, and also being curious about how you're showing up, about your impact on yourself, and staying with that. What could have been a moment, and what could have turned that around would have been to reach back out to, let's say, all the parents or certain, and say, hey, we want to ask how that landed for you. We want to ask how you're feeling after the conversation. Do you have other questions? By the way, that did not happen.
Sure. No, sure it didn't.
But that curiosity to say, I want to, for example, I want to check in. We had this conversation the other day.
Yeah.
I want to check in and see how that felt for you, how that resonated with you afterwards, after you had time to think and process. Tell me. And thinking through for yourself, how did that feel for you? And I think part of it is we also don't go as deep as we need to, right? When we're checking in, when we're
Just we
being curious
smooth
with
it over.
ourselves.
Oh,
Yes, we say,
no.
it wasn't great, but it bumped.
Yeah.
Is that
It's
a
fine.
body? It's fine.
It's fine.
It's
It's
fine.
fine. We're going to
It's
just like
fine.
tighten it up and
Yep.
not process any of
Keep
those
going.
emotions. Yeah.
Keep going. Yes.
It's that, I mean, that's, as we're talking about this sort of bigger conversation about how to stay connected to our presence, and that lightness is recognizing when do we dismiss ourselves, or when do we stop off. And that's, that's always a trigger phrase for myself. And when I'm like talking to other people is when someone goes, but it's fine. It's like, are we shutting down our ability to process?
What do you
Because
hear
that's
when
not gonna
someone
help us.
says, but it's fine, but it's fine, it's fine, it's fine? 'Cause
Yeah.
that's how it's playing. Yeah. What do you hear
No.
when someone says that?
Or if somebody's like, it's fine. It's like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to process this.
Yeah.
Like I'm shutting down my ability. Like I'm shutting down getting curious with, being with. And maybe right now that isn't the time, because it is sometimes we are in moments where we have to compartmentalize and go, it's fine. I don't have the time and energy. Like I have to set it aside right now. But sometimes I think it can be used as, it can stop us from true emotional exploration and true, like being present with our emotions. And it's like, you know what? It's not fine.
It's not.
It's not fine. It's not, that was not okay. I'm not okay. And I want to hear more, because I jumped in a bit. So I want to go back to that. You were making that point of, and sometimes we stay at the surface. We don't go deep enough. So what does that look like for you? And when we think about people who are listening, what does that look like to go deeper?
Tell me, and this is probably another dated reference. There's a book. There was a book titled, and I may butcher this a little bit, "It's Okay Not to Be Okay." So some of this for me, and I'm going to stay with self, because that's where I've had to talk about, working through it and staying even when it's hard, is as a Black person and a Black American who grew up in the South in predominantly white environments, with a family and from parents who our family has been here for probably centuries. I grew up like so many other African Americans being told, racism exists, it's out there, it's going to be hard, and you just have to have tough skin, thick skin, and you just have to withstand. You need to be able to withstand and let it bounce off of you, and don't let it impact you. And so much of my conditioning growing up was, don't let these emotions, these things that are happening to you or that you're experiencing that are driving these emotions, don't let it mess with you. You just got to be like Teflon. And as an adult and working, with myself and working through therapy, you mentioned mindfulness. I've also gotten into meditation and learned about mindfulness and being present. One of the, assignments that I've had and worked through and continue to work through is getting away from that's fine. So going below that surface to go deep and to actually say it. And when someone is asking, or I'm in conversation, to not say, but it's fine. It's fine. We'll figure it out. But to be explicit and saying, that wasn't fine. That was terrible. And I am really angry. I will never forget. And this was a few years ago, the first time I allowed myself, and I'm saying that, using that phrase intentionally, I allowed myself to say, I am angry, because it was in a meeting, and I was having and feeling my internal volcano, percolating, and I was doing my best to just keep it inside because I didn't want to show up and fall into a stereotype and all of these things that you navigate again.
Right.
As a Black person, predominantly white environments, you're doing your best to let the stuff bounce off you. You're doing your best to not play into the stereotypes. And so I was angry. I was really pissed. And when I said it, it literally, I could feel the steam, like the steam valve open up, release a little bit to let those feelings out, to say it out loud and to say, I'm angry. That sucks. I don't care. In this moment, I am prioritizing how I feel, and I'm going to claim and name the things that I am feeling right now. That's how you go deeper. And we have to really, how we support and help everyone and create the space for people to go deeper is create a space where people can say that they can name those things. They can say, that wasn't fun. That was terrible. And I am so angry. And I don't know what to think. I'm so confused. And part of the reason I think we are, not going deeper and people are hesitant they're not in spaces that allow for that. They're not in spaces where it's either safe or okay to go deeper. And part of, in particular, white supremacist culture is, everything is fine. And you don't rock the boat. You stay. Everything is even. You got to stay. And so you don't get to express that. You don't get to express these high emotions and just think about who's allowed to express.
Right.
Like who's allowed
especially
to be angry.
Anger. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who's allowed to be angry.
Yeah.
We allow for, a white man to be angry. No one's going to tell them, hey, that's not okay. You're disrupting. This is becoming a bad space because of we allow that. We have plenty of examples of seeing that anger and seeing that emotion and people being able to express it and then walk. And then for others, you're not.
Right. And sometimes be rewarded for it.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
And not, I allowed myself to be angry. Like that's still, because I'm sitting here going, I don't know if I've ever said that. There have probably been plenty of times where I needed to.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought about all the times that I really needed to say that and to be where I was and I was feeling it and I wasn't saying it. And because I wasn't saying it, it was showing up in other ways because I was. Yeah. And so I, was angry. I didn't say that I was angry and why I was. And so I showed up, I either shrank, which completely pulled back, or I did something that I didn't feel good about later because I was angry and I didn't feel allowed. I wasn't allowed to name it. I didn't feel like I could. And because I didn't, it shows up in all of these other ways.
Yeah. There's such and it's not just work, but I want to speak to that for a second, since I know that's the world we're in and a lot, the people who are listening is that and again, this is something that has come up in a lot of our other conversations and it will continue to come up is because, the culture of corporate America, right, was very much defined by and defined for
built for,
right? Yeah, white men in power, and it's like I had a conversation with Dr. Wildermuth, and we talked about the masks we have to wear, and then talking about trauma and how it was Erica was talking about how she said people do all this work in therapy that's so great and they make this progress only for it to become undone in the workplace.
Yes.
And right?
That's so good. Yes.
And just this, in talking with my colleague Jill Mata about, we have to be able to have real conversations and allow the space for emotions. And boy, I'm going to be honest, like we need a part 2 to this conversation, because like, I feel like we're hitting on something that's so important, which is emotions in the workplace, because we are humans, and there is, like, when we say like expressing it, that doesn't mean being harmful to people. That doesn't mean being hurtful. But just being able to say, I'm struggling, I'm scared, I'm angry, I'm and to have that space and to be equipped, right? I think that's one of the biggest opportunities we have, particularly for those people who are in positions of power and authority, is to be able to hold space for, be curious about, sit in. I mean, all of the things with emotions, because it's, it's like, well, I get the desire. I get it to not have emotions in the workplace.
Yeah.
I get it. But they're there. And when we have to suppress them, when we have to, and suppressing looks different depending on who you are and who you're with, right?
Yes.
I may be able to express things differently than you could, depending on the group we're with. And right. And even then the flip side is, I always talk about how, and men are culturally aren't allowed to express emotions of intimacy. And emotions of love and affection. And I'm not just talking romantic affection. I mean platonic affection, right? To their brothers and their female friends, and
all of those.
And it's
a trap for all of us.
And it's just costing us so much.
It is.
That I sit there and imagine, like, there's a bit of me that goes, as I think sort of full circle of where we started, of if we were able to collectively build up our muscles around, right, that emotional intelligence, that being able to be present, to be able to be curious, would we have to work so hard at being soft when things are hard?
Oh gosh.
Maybe.
I'm landing where you are. I'm saying maybe, but my immediate visceral reaction was no, because we'd make space for all of the emotions. And so because of that, we'd have these outlets. We'd be able to just express ourselves as is without, we wouldn't have to compartmentalize to stuff things down. And we wouldn't be suppressing. And correct me if I'm wrong in this, and I'm sure but I think emotions are tied to the limbic system, right? And so we wouldn't always be tamping that down in such an unhealthy way that it shows up negatively for us physically, and emotionally, mentally, right? And all of these other ways. And I'm also thinking about how that's primal to us as humans, right? It's what separates us and makes us unique, and how damaging it is to not make space for that, to always be tamping it down. And how it would absolutely, I don't know that we would need to make space for being soft, because we would always be open to people's full humanities. We would that would be completely open. And oh my gosh.
And the anticipatory anxiety, right? You shared your story about the conversation you may need to have in that anticipatory anxiety, and it's literally why I wrote my book, is my love letter to my fellow avoiders. That, and now part of that is that's not just on them. It is also largely on the other person as well, and how you receive it. And I think about the relationships, and whether they're close relationships, or even when they're, I'll use our relationship as an example. Like when you are in community with somebody, with others who are able to like be present with, hold space for your full, I think to use your language, and I love it,
Yeah.
that full humanity of experience. It's sort of just like this big breath of like, it's just this big relief of,
Yeah.
oh, I can just be me with you. I can
Yes.
just be with you.
Yes.
And that allows me to heal faster. That allows me
Yeah.
to recover from those moments
Yeah.
faster, right? To reconnect to that lightness faster.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have to. So I'm an I'm an ambivert. So between an extrovert, introvert, I love connecting with people. I am social, and I also like being by myself, and I like to recharge. Part of that is because when I'm in these spaces where I've, feeling like I need to armor up, to mask up, I need some deep recovery time and coming back to us and being in community where I can walk away from this and I can go to whatever my next thing is and just feel like, that was fun. That was good. I really get to feel everything and appreciate this and being with you. And I don't have to worry. I don't feel heavy. I'm not going to feel heavy. I'm not going to feel like, oh, let me go sit down somewhere, like, oh, I need to catch my breath or anything. I'm literally here and just being, and it costs so much energy. It requires so much energy to do all of that when I can't just be.
Yeah.
It requires so much energy from people when they can't just be. And it robs us, right? It robs, what would we not get if we couldn't just be with each other? What would
What are
we
we
miss out
missing?
on? Yeah. I would miss so much of you if I did like,
Likewise. I mean,
yeah,
and the reason I bring us up as an example is we, have our interactions were virtual only,
yes.
right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so dispelling some of that myth of like, well, you can't build relationships virtually. No,
yeah,
you
yeah,
absolutely can. But
yeah,
also just like there were signals to me and maybe vice versa from
yeah,
what you've shared of, oh, this is somebody. It's almost like, can I be me with them or can't I? Or
yeah,
do I
yeah,
need to? And that's where it's like that, okay, like I can just,
yes,
and 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 that doesn't necessarily take years and years and years to build. It's like when you show up in that way,
yeah,
you like, I felt that about you. I knew I could reach out to you. I
yeah,
knew that, or even I remember you connected, you noticed, you're like, oh, I can tell you're struggling. Like, hey, I just want to, like, what's going on? Just
yeah,
even that act was, oh, okay. Like I know, again, I can be fully myself, and hopefully you feel the other way. And it is just so much. And that doesn't mean that there may not be conversations or there may not be moments of, but that's not going to last a few weeks of
yeah,
ruminating. It's
yeah,
just going to be like, hey, I know I'm going to have it. I know it's going to be okay. Like I'm 99.9% sure it's going to be okay.
yeah.
And, but hopefully we can get to that. And it's just so much damn easier.
It
Like, it's not always easy, but it's just so much
No,
damn
but
easier.
it is so much easier. It's knowing that I can go to you and say, Sarah, I'm in a really like funky place. Like I'm in it and I can talk to you about it. I can be honest about it. And I mean, literally my heart has chills in saying that because it's life-saving to be able to do that, to be able to go to folks, to come to you to say, this is a terrible time. Here's why it's terrible. One of the things that has sustained me through a period of really difficult grief and losing my mother has been people making space for me to just come and be and say, I'm having this is a really hard week or a really hard day, or I know I'm in a bad space emotionally, and that people like yourself, right, will open the door to that without trying to pep talk me into, hey, cheer
Just
up.
put on a
Yeah,
smile.
yeah.
Just
She's in a better place, and I'm sure she's looking down
oh
on
yeah,
you, and she's so
like
proud
not
of you.
helpful.
Yes, and
Thank you,
I
and
miss my mom and wish I could hug her, and I can't, right? And so, you gave me a gift in being transparent and being vulnerable and saying, yeah, here's what I'm going through, and it's really hard, and it's coming in a couple of different places. And it when you did that, it just opened a conversation where I could acknowledge too, yes, actually, I've been struggling with this as well. And here's why. And I needed that, right? I needed that. I needed to have, we need that. We need that outlet. We need to be able to just to, like we've talked about, sharing our full humanity, being our full selves without pretense, without masking or anything, but just this is where I'm at today.
yeah.
Or in this hour and in this
Right,
moment.
right. In this
minute.
moment,
Yes.
I can't, and I am
Yes.
choosing not to. And just
Yes.
for context, just to share what you're referencing, we were supposed to meet earlier this week, just as a like, hey, let's
Yeah.
actually meet each other properly.
Yeah.
And my mental health was really struggling. I was physically exhausted because of having to put down my dog the week prior, because of, stress with work,
sorry.
because of
Yeah.
stress. Thank you. Because of, the war, because of just every, I mean, like, and
yeah.
the violence against, right? Like Black
Gestures
people in Asia,
broadly.
just
Yes.
everything, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and what was so, what was so beautiful is like, I also knew I could share that level instead of
Yeah.
just being like, hey, I need to reschedule.
Yes.
But then your
Yes.
response was, hey, you don't need to respond. I just want to make sure that you take time to rest and to, I forget your exact message, but,
Yeah.
I remember the feeling of reading it from the standpoint of like, hey, no need to respond. And then checking in and this idea of, I don't know, like there's this image that's coming up for me, of like almost, like how do we lock arms around each other? Like how do we, like how
how.
do we,
Yeah.
and
That's
yeah.
no, that's how. That's it's I see you. I see you because people, what is it that Oprah said this on her last, I think her last show, about people, what people want most in this world, and the thing that she had learned after sitting in however many tens of thousands, hundreds of interviews. People want to be seen and to be heard.
Yeah.
And in that, just saying, I see you. I know that this is a really tough time, and I just want to just say, hey, no, you don't need to expend any additional effort here or do anything. Just I'm thinking about you. We'll catch up. But that allows people to recover, right? It allows them to, yes, to recover more quickly, to come back, to cycle through what they're going through, to actually deal with it, to work through it when you have that. Because when you don't have that, I have to reschedule.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And I wrote in quotes and underlined, it's not flippant to say it literally could be life-saving.
It is not at all flippant
Yeah.
to say that. In this, it absolutely could be life-saving. Yep.
Katrina, I think you and I could clearly we could talk all day.
Yes.
And clearly we need to have you back for us to explore lots of different topics.
Yes.
I want to honor the question that we always ask people, to give you the space to share.
Yeah.
And I always invite the audience to think about what is this for you today? But what's a conversation you've had with yourself or with other people that transformed you?
Ooh, and when I read this, saw this, I had to say, oh, let me come back to that, because That is deep. That is, ooh. I've been in the space and I'm fortunate that I've been in a space to have transformative conversations with a lot of people as an HR and DEI practitioner. One of the most, and it's hard to name one because I feel like I'm always, I get to go deep with people in lots of different ways. And I think one of the most transformative conversations for me actually was with someone years ago that there was an employee relations issue, and I was, working with the person, and them, as we were working through, the person starting to peel back the layers and talk about some of the things that had been happening for them personally, which were directly contributing to how they were showing up in that particular environment. And it was, as they started to peel back those layers, it's like you could see everything. And seeing somebody who on the surface people perceived as so difficult and hard, and seeing that person literally soften in front of my eyes as I was talking to them. That was something. That was something. And it was transformative because talk about gateways and how you start to open up. It showed me, it was a moment that told me and showed me physically, emotionally, spiritually, like this is the power of acknowledgement, of owning what's happening, what has happened to you, the power of it, how it is. I mean, we're talking about transformative, how it can literally, change someone right in front of your eyes. And it left me with this question of what would happen if you did that for yourself, right? What would happen if you were to start to name things, to own things, but to peel back those layers? Well, what would happen for you? What would that mean for you? Because I saw how it changed that person. I saw how it changed that person coming out of it. I saw how they started to shift, and yes, they, started to show up a little bit differently, but I could see that it was changing for them.
Love it. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Katrina,
Sarah,
if people want to connect with you, what's the best place for them to connect with you?
You know me, you love me from Twitter.
I do. And you know what? Let me just quick say, I was going to give a shout out.
Yes.
Follow her, because one thing I so, even if I may not always respond, but I always stop and I always read. You share articles, you share what's happening in the news. I feel like you're my little source of a pulse on things that I may miss or not. And so if you are somebody who's looking for, resources, especially from the standpoint of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and considering perspectives, from just all of those, all encompassing, I feel like every day there's some oh, this is an article, or you've introduced me to some amazing researchers and different concepts. And so connect with her on Twitter. You won't regret it. I can tell you that. And if you're, and if you're lucky like me, you'll get to know and love her and be loved by her as well.
Katrina_HRM. You can thank my perpetual curiosity and also insomnia.
that's like us. One ADHD brain to another. I get it.
Yes. Squirrel. Yes. All of the things. Yes.
Well, Katrina,
thank you, Sarah.
This is, we were both hopeful that this would be a hell of a way to end the week, and it truly was. And I'm so grateful for you, and thank you for coming on and sharing. One thing I will just share with the audience, we talked earlier about gratitude. So share with us, what are you grateful for? Feel free, and I'll in the closing show notes here, I'll give you a way to do that. But just think about and share with us, and I'll be sure to pass those along to Katrina. Katrina, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate you.
Likewise, same. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Conversations on Conversations. I just always sit in such deep gratitude and an overwhelming fullness in these conversations. And I hope that you get to experience that as well. Getting the opportunity to talk to Katrina, and we explored a lot of different topics. We talked about that idea of how do we stay soft when things are hard? And I already have a list of what part 2 and 3 and 4 need to be with her. I know for me, something that I'm going to hold on to this conversation was that story she shared about allowing herself to say she was angry. And that obviously as a Black woman and working in predominantly a white company that's a different type of risk because of the stereotype of the angry Black woman. But as a woman, as a white woman, I realized that I don't know when I've allowed myself to say I'm angry, but there have certainly been times. And the other thing I'm thinking about is what can I do to make sure that it's safe for someone else to be able to say, I'm struggling right now, Sarah, I'm angry, or that didn't feel good. And so that's what I'm going to hold on to from this conversation, amongst many things. And we want to make sure this conversation extends beyond the show. So if something resonated, if something sparked a curiosity, if you have a challenge or a different perspective, we want to hear from you, and we will record and share them on future episodes. So send us an email at podcast, podcast, at sarahnollwilson.com, or you can connect with me through social media. My DMs are always open. My responses may not always be prompt, but they will be seen, and we would love to. And so I want to hear from you. What are you grateful for? What's on your gratitude list? And I'll share those with Katrina. And if you like this, if you are moved by the work we're doing, if you want to support this podcast further, please consider becoming a patron. You can do that by visiting Patreon, patreon.com at conversations on conversations, where not only your financial support will sustain this podcast and our incredible team, but you also get access to some pretty great benefits like unique swag and Patreon only content and events. And if you haven't already, please rate, review, and subscribe to the show. These are ways that it helps us get more exposure and be able to continue to invite incredible people. You can do that on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. And then finally, I'm going to sit in gratitude and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the incredible team supporting me and supporting this work. So a huge thank you to Drew Noll and Nick Wilson for the editing and producing of the show, to Olivia Reinert for working and helping us with transcriptions, and to Caitlin Summit Nelson for helping with marketing support. And final thanks to Katrina. I just wanting to be the joy. And that is something that I am going to strive for myself. Finally, my lovely listeners, my fellow humans, just a reminder that when we can change the conversations we have with ourselves and others, we can change the world, if even for a little bit. So with that, please make sure you're resting, you're rehydrating, and stay well. Bye, my friends.